What's up, y'all? Welcome to the CFB channel. This is the Rise. Oh, of course, this just. Hold on 1 second. This is already frustrating. Okay. Let me get us back here. What a great introduction, man. What a great introduction. Let's take two on that one. Welcome all to the CFB Nation YouTube channel. This is the Rise and NFL Draft Podcast coming to you live on a Saturday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a live mock draft situation. Of course, I'm Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at IrishBreakdown.com. You should make sure to go over to IrishBreakdown.com. And also, while you're at it, subscribe to CFB Nation, both on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're on the YouTube channel right now, you should hit that notification bell, like button, all that great stuff. You should do that right this moment because we are going to be bringing you on this particular podcast a lot of draft content leading up. We are in the midst of March, kind of finishing up here, and then we'll be in April before we know it. And the end of April, obviously, the 2023 NFL Draft officially kicks off. So what better to do a little mock draft, because I know I personally haven't done a mock draft since the Carolina Panthers traded up to the number one overall selection with the Chicago Bears. So we wanted to do it, though. I didn't want to do this a solo show. Wanted to do this a little bit of a fun little interactive back and forth, alternating picks. So I had to get my guy, Nick Muzzillo, on, who is a good friend. Work with him closely on the consulting side of the business with several agents in the NFL draft sphere. But don't want to introduce him too much myself. I want to let Nick kind of get the floor here. Nick, if you could introduce yourself, man. Obviously, first time on the channel, but appreciate you for coming on, brother.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for having me, buddy. I appreciate having me on. I'm really excited to join you on the show tonight, talk draft. And like I said, it's a pleasure. So thanks so much. And as you mentioned, yes, we do work, we do work together. And by way of a mutual friend, we met almost a year ago now, and I can say the rest is history. So, I look at, I kind of look at you as my protege right now, and, a guy who, really is, is really, helped bring me along here. So it's really exciting. But enough, as far as, just a little bit about me. Like I said, we work in the agency space with the consulting side with RPM Data. I'm a scouting assistant and draft analyst for them. You can also see, and so not only that, but I do help contribute to not only your website, but have recently just begun contributing with DLF, Dynasty League Football. So you can also catch me there as well, which is very exciting. I'll be covering a lot of the college scouting side and rookies coming into the NFL. So that'll be some exciting things there too. You'll be able to see a lot of my stuff, and you can catch me on Twitter a lot. I usually do my best to act like what I'm talking about, and post about rookies and the draft and all. So certainly by no means do I consider myself an expert, but I'm going to do my best tonight to see if I can nail this mock draft we're going to do. But thank you again for having me. It's truly a pleasure to be on here.
Oh, no doubt, man. So first round mock draft, we're going to get through all these 31 draft selections. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins pick was vacated due to tampering, so they lost their draft pick. And, that's going to be a conversation piece that I feel like people haven't talked about enough, kind of working into this draft cycle. But we are going to work through a top 32 pick. How we're going to do is we're going to kind of do an alternating order here. So Nick is, of course, he's the guest on the show tonight. So I'm going to let him go to first as we get kicked off here. The mock draft simulator that we're going to be using tonight is on riseanddraft.com. So if you ever want to check out do some fun mock drafts leading up to draft day, I would definitely recommend that. And we already had a great question, Nick. This is why I love this community so much here, man. Patrick ND just asked if the question was, is this what you would do or what you would expect? And that's a great question, Patrick. And I will say this. I am going to do a mock draft. Maybe I'll have Nick back on. Maybe I'll have somebody else. I'm not really sure as far as what the format will be, but that'll be probably a week or two before the draft. That will be the predictive board as far as what I'm hearing, what I expect, maybe a little bit more of a realistic touch. Tonight, we're several weeks away from the draft. There's still pro days being worked out. There's still a lot of rumors that are going to happen. So we want to run this like we're the general managers, right? So if Ryan Roberts was the general manager of Team X, what would he do in that draft position? If Nick Muzzillo was the GM of Team X, what would he do in that situation? So we are going to be running these draft boards. So there might be some guys that you're like, that guy's going to go a lot higher. Yes, agree. But that's why you need to tune into the channel a couple weeks before the NFL draft officially kicks off. So without further ado, Nick, let's get rocking and rolling here, man. I know I know everyone wants to see our beautiful faces, and I totally understand that you're very upset about this, but we're going to work through kind of the mock draft. I want people, especially live on YouTube, to be able to see the mock draft that we're working through as well. So without further ado, Nick, Carolina Panthers just traded up, gave up 2 first-round picks. Well, flipped first-round picks, gave up another future first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, and then, of course, DJ Moore to the Chicago Bears to move up from number 9 all the way up to pick number 1. So, without further ado, Carolina Panthers are on the clock to Mr. Nick Muzzillo.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. Obviously, this is a no-brainer here. It's obviously going to be a quarterback. Now, I did hear today that, I don't recall where I heard it, but I had heard it this week. It might have been earlier today, that you don't make this move without going up to number 1 and taking a quarterback. So this is obviously a quarterback. Now, who they take, that's another question. And if you don't know, that's also another question you have to answer. But I feel pretty confident it's going to be a quarterback. For me, since we're doing if I'm the GM of the Panthers, so if I'm Scott Fitterer, for me, because now this will be his 3rd quarterback in 3 years, 3 or 4 years. I don't want to say he's on the hot seat, but I would say it's very important that he gets this right. So to me, I understand Anthony Richardson has probably put himself into the top 5 conversation, but if I'm the Panthers and I'm GM Scott Fitterer, I think the pick here is CJ Stroud.
Okay.
That seems, and that's just kind of the gut feeling that I get, because Stroud and Young we've gone back and forth with Stroud and Young. It's been debated all throughout the season, even during the summer and summer scouting, and now here we are again. But Stroud has probably at this point surpassed Bryce Young just because of the fact that he didn't participate at the combine. When Young's pro day comes along, that could be a totally different story. Because the one thing Bryce Young does really well, I know we've gone back and forth this a lot, is the way he can just create out of structure and the way he can make plays on the run and extend plays. And he's just the best at doing that, out of all the quarterbacks in this year's draft. For CJ Stroud, that for him, in terms of being able to sit back in the pocket, being able to diagnose plays, his pre-snap reads and adjustments, he's the best when it comes to that part of the game, out of this entire quarterback class. So I think Carolina really likes that part of Stroud, and I think that it could be something where they've seen flashes of it, especially in that Georgia game, where he can create out of structure and extend plays, and I'm sure they want to see that. But with Frank Reich coming in, who's a terrific coach, I think this could be a situation where they know that they can coach him up on that, and they can get a lot out of him.
Well, and I think that no matter if you are on the CJ Stroud or the Bryce Young line of thinking, right? I think that I think we all can agree that it has to be one of the first 2 at the top of the drafts if you're Carolina, because I think Carolina's roster is a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for, right? Like, it's not wide receivers is definitely a position that needs to be retooled. They need a tight end, but you get a good running back in Miles Sanders. You have a good offensive line coming back, one that really developed last year. You have a good defense with foundational pieces like J.C. Horn, Brian Burns, Derek Brown, Jeremy Chin. They are, I think, a quarterback away from being a contender in the division. Again, Absolutely. I'm not saying contender for a Super Bowl, but for the division, I think it is. And Nick, I also like the pick, though, man, because this one made number 2 overall very easy for me. Very easy, right? Number
2 is very easy for you. This is a layup, I would say. But no, just to comment on that, Ryan, what you said, I mean, I totally agree with you on that. If you look up and down the roster, they have a lot of guys. They have a win now win-ready roster right now, and they are a quarterback away. So just a matter of finding the right guy who could do that. Because now, obviously, they're going to have to find a receiver. They're going to have to draft and develop some guys on the outside, or find somebody who can come in there, and give you some good reps there throughout the season. Because with the loss of DJ Moore, I mean, that really hurts. But if being able to find a quarterback, though, that's the biggest piece to this whole puzzle for the Panthers. And I do agree. If they take Stroud, whoever they feel it may be, I mean, it's very well possible, they could be in the hunt for a playoff spot next year within the division, just because of how, subpar it is. So,
yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think either way, you need one of those higher floor quarterbacks at the top of the class with what the roster looks like. But easy one again here, Nick, for me. Houston Texans, number 2. We're going to take Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama. Look, I think that there's going to be some conversation about the high ceiling versus the high floor and Anthony Richardson and all that great conversation. But the Houston Texans have been a dumpster fire for a couple of years now. So you need some guy that I know we're going to look at the height and everything, but as long as you do well within the structure of your offense and allow Bryce Young to work within himself properly, I think that they have a chance to be a lot better really quickly with a guy like a Bryce Young. I think he has that type of upside. So Bryce Young with the Houston Texans, number 2 overall.
I like it. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Arizona Cardinals, Nick, number 3. This is a little bit of a funky one, man. And we're not doing trades today. This might be honestly a pick where you would see a trade back to get that third quarterback off the board and someone to jump Indianapolis. But Arizona cannot trade out of this. So Arizona, 3rd overall pick. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, to me, I'm just going to go chalk here and just take the best player available. It's going to be this is Will Anderson for me, and especially because losing Zach Allen to free agency this past week, I think that's a big loss for them. So I think Will Anderson, you bring Anderson in here, he's a plug and play guy. He'll start day one, and it'll just change the whole look of your defense. And I think they need to make a splash. I mean, last season their defense was just atrocious. I mean, they didn't really get a lot out of their front 7. So I think they need an impact guy here, because that's really something that they're missing in a big way. Kyler Murray, I mean, he's going to be out for half. He'll probably miss the entire first part of the season. So by midseason, Kyler will be back. But there's still a lot of question marks on that team. But if you can get your defense in order, it's just going to help. It'll help the entire offense as a whole, being able to stop opposing offenses and creating some 3 and outs and just getting out. Just getting out of some situations where, you're not relying on your offense to get you back in the game. So,
for sure. And if anybody that's live with us here, because we got a bunch of people that are live with us right now, if there's any opinions out there on any picks that we're making, if there's something you agree with, disagree with, a player that you would take in a particular spot, please put it out there, because we love the interaction, obviously, on this podcast, whether you're on the Irish Breakdown channel or the CFB Nation channel. That's kind of what we strive for, is the community aspect of everything. Nick, I think it makes a lot of sense, man. One trade that no one talks about that I think actually could potentially happen if they were to trade out of the 3rd spot is everybody talks about the Raiders at 7, right? Everyone talks about, a couple of the teams a little bit later in this draft, the Atlanta Falcons or another player.
Right.
But I think that it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if the Indianapolis Colts traded up from 4 to 3 to make sure someone can't jump them at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
So I think Arizona, all that being said, is that I think Arizona might be in an interesting spot where they might be able to trade back 1 spot, get a extra draft pick, and still get Will Anderson. That could be a conversation that happens.
Yes, that is very likely that could happen, and I would not be surprised if that does. Because just going back 2017, and it would be interesting to see what the compensation would be to move up 1 spot. Because you remember in 17, I believe it was Chicago. You probably remember better than I do, Ryan. But Chicago moved 1 spot up to take Trubisky, and I think they may have given up an extra first and maybe a 2/3. So I don't really recall the whole conversation, but they got a pretty good. They got a pretty good return just for moving back 1 spot and still taking their guy. So I think I don't know if that would be the same compensation, but absolutely I could totally see that scenario playing out, and that could absolutely be a possibility. And and especially because at this point, like you said, you have the Raiders, you have the Falcons. Those teams, they had, they're going to do everything they can to get a quarterback, especially if and like I said, this is just what we think the GMs would do. I mean, it's entirely possible this can go an entirely different route. It could be Richardson at 1. It could be Bryce Young at 1. So if they have a guy who's higher on their board, it wouldn't surprise me if they do whatever they can to get up to that 3rd spot. So that's why I think it's imperative. It is important this draft, and I'll let you get into the pick here for the Colts. It is important that they get a quarterback, Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm going to give him Anthony Richardson from Florida. And look, man, there was a point in this draft process where I thought that Indianapolis could have potentially stuck at 4, and CJ Stroud was going to be the guy that people were just going to overthink, and he would have just kind of fell into their lap. Obviously, it doesn't look like that is the situation anymore. Anthony Richardson is a gamble. 100% Absolutely. Is a gamble in this spot. There's no doubt about it. But for me, as a independent person that's just kind of sitting back and watching, my job's not going to be on the line, so I can make it a little bit easier, right? But exactly. Also, Indianapolis has gone the veteran route year in and year out, right? From, Carson Wentz obviously was a big failure. Matt Ryan this past year. Phillip Rivers got him to a playoff berth, but obviously he was on the tail end of his career.
Right.
But the last 2 veteran quarterbacks that they've gone after, they've gone the older route, and it hasn't worked out.
Yep.
So you need to make a splash, man. I feel similar to how Carolina is with what they've been doing at the quarterback position the last few years.
Right.
They had to make a splash in this draft. I think Indianapolis makes a splash. They take Anthony Richardson because I just think that this is kind of the high risk, high reward type of opportunity that could pull a franchise into the right direction moving forward.
And you got Shane Steichen there, who we saw what he did with Jalen Hurts last year.
Yep.
So I think the front office, the coaching department, the whole coaching staff, they could probably have confidence that they can pull the most and help Richardson reach his ceiling if that's their guy. But you're right, like you said, I think it's imperative. Like, this is a make or break year for Ballard and the front office. Like, they need to get a quarterback because it's public knowledge how much the owner Irsay really wants a quarterback and how much he misses Andrew Luck and how that's continued to haunt him for the last 5 years. So. And like you said, they've gone the old route. It hasn't worked. Pretty much the time has come where they need to get younger at quarterback and build around a franchise guy. So it makes a lot of sense.
Love it, man. Love it. So Seattle Seahawks are in an interesting situation, Nick. Obviously, they got this draft pick. This is not their technical draft pick here. They got it, obviously, in a trade. And they're coming off of a playoff berth. I think that they were a little bit of smoke and mirrors last year, but Geno Smith obviously had a dynamic season after being the comeback player of the year. The roster has some pieces, but there's also a lot of holes here. So first of 2 draft picks in the first round for the Seattle Seahawks, who are you taking at 5?
If you could, Ryan, can you scroll down a little on the board there?
Yeah, I can go position by position too if you need me to. Just let me know.
Yeah, no, I'm taking a look here. So all right, let's go back. Yeah, go back up just for a second because I'm just trying to see who maybe makes sense for them. Here, if we're going to sit in the GM's chair, Jalen Carter makes the most sense, but there are a lot of red flags right now with this situation. So I'm going to put my GM hat on. Fortunately, I'm going to pass on Carter. And to me, I mean, Seattle's defense, their front 7 was Civ-like last season. I mean, everybody ran the ball on them. Yeah. And, to me, I mean, I don't agree with this pick. I wouldn't take him here, but if like I said, if we're having our GM hat on, I'm gonna have to go Tyree Wilson here for the Seahawks.
Ooh.
I know this is probably very unpopular to me and you because and like I said, this is not where I would take Wilson because this guy, he's very raw. He's gonna need a lot of development. But if there was an organization who can get the most out of him, it's Seattle because they've shown that they're very stable. Everybody's on the same page. And John Snyder, Pete Carroll, they've done a good job of building at least of creating a consistent winner who's in it every year. Maybe not for the Super Bowl, but is in the hunt for a playoff spot. Getting the most out of Geno Smith like they did. I mean, who would have thought anybody could do that? And the guy, played himself in the $105 million contract. So quarterback doesn't make sense for me unless they see it. Unless they, it could also be Will Levis there. Potentially, but I think their defense, I think they're in win now mode right now. I think they feel like they have a chance to win, especially with Geno there.
Yep.
Who would have thought we would have said that? even as most recently as 2 years ago. But you got to give credit to Geno Smith and what he did last year, and also the talent that they've already put around him, and just with and amongst the organization. So I think Tyree Wilson gives them that guy that hopefully can develop into an all-pro player, an impact player, could change the game.
Yeah, he's an interesting player, man. If he hits and he's in the right situation, I think he could be a very good football player. Just, obviously,
yeah,
this isn't the most top-heavy draft of all time, so there's going to be some guys pushed up. I feel like he's one of them, but we'll see obviously how things shape.
Let me ask you, Ryan. I mean,
yes.
in your opinion, would you see this as a situation that can work for him? Because I do agree, he's situation dependent. Wherever he lands, it's got to be the right fit in the right situation. Which Seattle, but like I said, Seattle has shown that they have a pretty good coaching staff. They've been very consistent year in, year out. They've shown an ability to be able to make the playoffs, and they've been able to find talent and develop that talent. So I think it could be a good fit for him.
Well, I think one thing that Pete Carroll's done consistently throughout his career, whether he's called defense or if he's had a separate defensive coordinator, is he has used a lot of multiple fronts, some 3-man, some 4-man. And I think the biggest appeal to me that Tyree Wilson brings is that he has kind of that alignment versatility. He can move up and down the line of scrimmage a little bit. Mm-hmm. Who he reminds me a little bit of, and I'm not comparing him necessarily to this player, but Tyree Wilson, defensive end out of Texas Tech, I see a little bit of Michael Bennett there. Just a little bit of Michael Bennett, who was obviously very good with the Seattle Seahawks.
At all-time Seahawk. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And
Absolutely.
He was that guy, though, that he could play outside, he could play in. And so so I think he does fit that situation. And yes, I see people saying in the chat, we will make sure to be saying that the position and the school that these players are playing, so that there's some extra context. So that's my fault. Apologies, moving forward. But yeah, I think it makes some sense from a fit perspective. It's just, I think it's more the value than like necessarily the fit, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
So number 6 overall, Detroit Lions. 2 names that are popping out to me right here, who are right near the top of the board, Jalen Carter. And everybody knows that I'm a Devin Witherspoon guy. He's my cornerback one in this class out of Illinois. Jalen Carter, obviously the defensive tackle out of the University of Georgia. I'm going to pass on Carter right now just because there are some things that still need to be figured out a little bit here, right? I still think he's going to go in the top 10 when it's all said and done, unless he just absolutely bombs all the personality tests and the rest of the rechecks and all that stuff. But I'm going to give Detroit, though, Devin Witherspoon, because I think the cool thing about this situation is that Jeff Okudah, who came out of Ohio State's cornerback, he took a nice step last year after a couple, up and down years due to inconsistency and injury. I thought he had a pretty solid 2022 season. And they also just signed Emmanuel Mosley to a 1-year deal, who's coming off an injury, but a good football player when he plays. The great thing is that if you take Devin Witherspoon with those 2 guys, Devin Witherspoon could play inside at nickel. He can play outside when you need him to. If Emmanuel Mosley's not back healthy, then he's your starting outside corner. If he is back healthy and playing good football, then you can move Devin Witherspoon inside and do a lot of different things with him. I love Devin Witherspoon, man. So give me Devin Witherspoon here to the Detroit Lions. It's just one of my guys this year, man. I'm going to keep riding with them.
I know.
Number 7 overall, Nick, Las Vegas Raiders. We'll start hitting this a little bit quicker because we're taking a little bit of time, but it's just good analysis as always, man.
No, I got you. Yeah, we'll keep it rolling here. All right, so I'll go Will Levis here. You don't get rid of Dave. You don't make that all the things you did with Derek Carr, as public as that was, without clearly without clearly showing your hand. I wouldn't say they showed their hand, but it's clear that they want to go in a different direction. So I think Will Levis is the guy here. You bring Jimmy Garoppolo in, maybe can certainly help bring him along, and I'm sure Josh McDaniels. I mean, he has shown that he has been able to develop quarterbacks. I mean, granted, he played with the greatest of all time, so you can't really analyze that too well, but too much, because that's totally different situation. But I think Will Levis is the guy here. It seems like I don't think he's going to fall outside of the top 10. So if I put my GM hat on for the Raiders, I think this makes a lot of sense for them, because I think they want to find their own guy and get their guys. So I think Levis is the pick for the Raiders, and he can learn under Garoppolo. And potentially by 2024, they hand the keys over to Levis.
And you know, one thing that we all know that general managers do in the NFL, Nick, one thing that we all know is that they sabotage one another. And I'm about to sabotage you in a second here, okay? Because if I was back on the clock with the Philadelphia Eagles at the 10th overall selection, I would probably take Jalen Carter. And you're an Eagles fan, so I'm going to sabotage you right here. And I'm going to take Atlanta, Jalen Carter off the board here. Defensive tackle out of the University of Georgia. A lot to prove, a lot to understand, a lot of background checks that are going to continue to happen. But, man, if the Atlanta Falcons get him with the 8th overall selection and he is clean off the fields, which we didn't hear much of during his Georgia career, it's just the recency, right?
Right.
That you just got the best player in the draft potentially at pick 8.
Absolutely.
So, Jalen Carter, number 8 overall pick.
Listen, you got to do what you got to do. So, you got to put it you got to put out a winner, man. You got to sell tickets. So, I totally get it. Yeah.
And we had Tyler Evans that just posted a comment, Nick, which I thought was kind of funny. He said, I could see the Raiders taking Levis. McDaniels did have take Tebow in the first round when he was with the Denver Broncos. So very, very good point, Tyler.
That is a very good point. I'll never forget that. Yeah.
Yes, man. Yes. What a disaster his tenure in Denver was, and the Raiders aren't starting out too great either.
Yeah,
Chicago
exactly.
Bears.
Right.
Nick, I'm going to put a little pressure on you, man. There's a lot of Notre Dame fans that listen to this channel, and a lot of Notre Dame fans are obviously pretty close to Chicago, an hour and a half away. So there's a lot of Chicago Bear fans in this community as well, man. So you can't mess this pick up. Chicago Bears, number 9.
Right. For me, the name that stands out here is Paris Johnson. And in my evaluation of this class, I thought Paris Johnson was a top 10, 15 player overall in this entire draft. And it makes a ton of sense. You have Justin Fields, who basically you're going to build your team around. You got him a receiver. You still might need a running back, but you really need to invest in offensive line, keep him upright, and give him a chance to develop as a passer and be able to push the ball downfield. Paris Johnson is my offensive tackle 1 in this class. I think he has all the makings of a guy who can step in and start day one. I mean, you just turn on the tape, you see the athleticism, the way he moves, the way the way he moves in space, and the way he is as a run blocker as well. Like I said, the athleticism really sticks out, and I think he'd be a great fit for Chicago. But you really need to invest in your offensive line, be able to protect him, and give Field every opportunity. So I think Paris Johnson was my guy here at number 10. I'm sorry, at number 9.
Number 9, yep. And I know Tyler Evans just said he wanted Skoronski there because Skoronski's a Northwestern guy, and of course Northwestern is in Chicago as well. So that
is that what you're going for? I didn't. That's right. I totally forgot. I drew a blank there. I was trying. I knew you were giving me some sort of a layup, but I missed. So
no, you're good, man. You're good. But Nick, this leaves me in an interesting situation with the Philadelphia Eagles with the first of their 2 draft picks in the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft, number 10 overall. There's a couple things that are running through my mind. One is defensive end because Brandon Graham signed back to a 1-year deal, but obviously he's very old in the tooth. Going to be a guy that is probably going to move it on for greener pastures here pretty soon, probably after this season. But then the other spot that I'm thinking about is Isaac Seumalo is a free agent this offseason, and most likely the Eagles are probably not going to retain him, but I know they're still talking to him. Yeah. So there's a hole at offensive guard. And then the other is offensive tackle because Lane Johnson is also getting older, and his body's kind of been breaking down a bunch recently, right? Yep. So he's kind of near the end. So I'm going to take a player that kind of fits the last 2 conversation pieces in one, and that is Peter Skoronski, the offensive tackle from Northwestern. And kind of my thought process here is for everyone just kind of listening is that Skoronski's the type of player that can come in day 1 and start inside a guard, could do that seamlessly. Yep. And then when Lane Johnson retires in a year or 2, then that might be a situation where you say, Skoronski, you're out to right tackle now, brother. Like that's kind of the easy transition. So Peter Skoronski, Philadelphia Eagles there with the 10th overall selection. I need to get your reaction to that though, Nick, because obviously you're an Eagles fan, if that happens.
Yeah, I can totally see that happening because the Eagles like to do stuff like that. They're always looking for value. They're always looking for the best player available. And it's very well possible that Peter Skoronski could be that guy. But also what they do their draft philosophy is they like to build their offensive defensive line in the draft and build around that, and then fit everything else in. So they really prioritize the trenches in the draft, and it makes a ton of sense, especially with Lane Johnson getting up there. Jordan Mailata. I mean, being able to hit on that draft, hit on him as a 7th-round pick. He's not going anywhere. He's signed long term for a while, but he's still in his 20s, so still a lot of football left ahead of him. But Skoronski's the guy. You can put him anywhere on the offensive line. I mean, he could even play center if he wanted to, but he can step in at guard right away if you need him to play there. I mean, I also think he's a day one tackle too. Whatever situation you might go in, so he has that kind of ability. But absolutely, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I also thought Gonzalez here, but
they just retained Slay and Bradbury was my only thought there, right?
And that makes a lot of sense too. But knowing them, being an Eagles fan, knowing them and knowing the draft philosophies, it wouldn't surprise me if they pick an offensive lineman and somebody who could step in day one and start for them right away.
Yeah, how his resume just tells me it's built through the trenches most likely. Like that's kind of his thing. Like I've seen a lot of people with the 10th overall selection going like Bijan. Like I would love Bijan Robinson as a potential fit in Philadelphia, but it's just that's not a position they're going to prioritize typically. No,
they don't prioritize running backs. You're probably going to see a running back later on in the draft, maybe day 2, early day 4. They're going to prioritize the trenches. It's probably going to be an offensive or defensive lineman depending on how their board shakes out and where they have these guys. But I like the pick for Ed Skoronski. I would not have a problem with that if that ends up being the case.
Well, Nick, not to again put pressure on you, man, but Tommy Guns, who's in the chat, who's a good listener and a great member of the Irish Breakdown community, is a Tennessee Titans fan. So you got Tennessee Titans here, pick 11. Who you got from a man, Tommy?
All right, let's see what I can do for Tommy here. Can you scroll down again, Ryan, please?
Absolutely.
Let me see what we got. Let's see.
I can sort by positions again if you need it as well. Just let me know.
No, that's fine. All right, so for Tommy, I'm just going to go with who I think the best player. Actually, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this for Tommy because you went ahead and pretty much cut the rug from under me again, Ryan, with that pick of Skoronski because I had Skoronski to Tennessee here at 11. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go with a guy who's getting a lot of buzz right now, who I think probably is going to get into the top 15. I'm going to go Broderick Jones here from offensive tackle out of Georgia. This guy, he might have the most upside out of any of these offensive tackles. I mean, so young. He's 19 years old. He's also a guy who's, extremely athletic. He can move in space. He has a physical side to him. He still needs some development from the technique side, the mechanical side of the position. But Taylor Lewan is gone. He's a free agent. They cut him. I think they need, they have Tannehill back there. I don't know what they're going to do with Malik Willis. But at the end of the day, left tackle is a premium position in the NFL, and you need to make sure that that position is secure. So I think it'll be Jones here. I went back and forth with Christian Gonzalez because I think they do need to attack their defensive secondary because that was an issue last year. So Gonzalez made sense, but I think Broderick Jones. I'm gonna take Broderick Jones here at 11.
I actually really love that fit for the Tennessee Titans, especially because Broderick Jones is exactly the type of tackle they gravitate towards, right? Like that power-based,
absolutely
wide frame, just kind of mover in the run game, right? Like he plays with that great base, and that's kind of the big things that pop out of Broderick Jones. And I think he would be a plug-and-play left tackle. There would be some growing pains, right? But I'd rather see his growing pains than see Nicholas Petit-Frere start at left tackle next year for the Tennessee Titans. So
Derrick Henry's still there. I mean, there's been talk about moving him, but I don't know if he's going to have much of a market, especially being a running back at on the wrong side of 30. He's got a lot of miles too, so it's probably best. It's more than likely he stays. So if you can bring a guy in there who could be a plug and play left tackle, and not miss too much of a beat, I think it makes a lot of sense.
And someone just asked if this is a wide receiver position technically for right now for the Houston Texans with their 12th overall selection.
Mm-hmm.
Not for me, just because there's a player on the board that I think is getting overlooked tremendously in this draft right now and getting pushed down the board for whatever reason. But I still think he's a top 10 player in this class, in my opinion. Right. So we'll see obviously how that works out. But I love Myles Murphy out of Clemson, the defensive end. You got your guy on the offensive side of the football with Bryce Young with the second overall pick. Get a potential guy that you can now build that defense around. So you get one guy on both sides of the football to really start getting that regime moving in the right direction that has been a mess over the last few years. So Myles Murphy, defensive end, Clemson. Added a quarterback with the number 2 overall selection to the Houston Texans. Now I give him a pass rusher with the number 12. That's obviously 2 of the more important parts of the game in today's league in the passing era of football. So give me Myles Murphy, Clemson defensive ends.
Yeah, no, I like it. I love the pick. It's a nice value there, especially if as a top 10, as a top 10 player in this draft, to get him outside the top 10. It's a great value. And you got DeMeco Ryans there, who's a defensive guy. I'm sure he's probably going to want to prioritize the defense and fix that defense. And especially if you're going to build around Bryce Young, you got to make sure that he has you got to make sure that you put a good defense around him too, as well, to give him every opportunity. So I like Murphy there. I love Murphy there at 12 for the Texans.
And Murphy's been around DeMeco Ryans has coached in 3-man fronts. He's coached in 4-man fronts too. So Myles Murphy's another one of those guys, similar to Tyree Wilson we were talking about earlier, that can play in multiple fronts and kind of move around the defensive line. But to your pick, Nick, 13 overall, New York Jets. We're going to assume, for the sake of this mock draft, that Aaron Rodgers is a part of the New York Jets, just in a hypothetical situation.
It's more than likely it's going to happen. Yep. It's only a matter of time before it happens. So let's say Rodgers to the Jets. I'm going to put my GM hat on here, Ryan.
Yep.
I think in this situation, I see a name on the board here who's continuing to fall, and this is probably a case where we just have to take him. So I'm going to take cornerback out of Oregon, Christian Gonzalez. I understand Sauce Gardner's there, but listen, why not have 2 great cornerbacks, and you can do all different kinds of things with your defense. You can run zone now. You can play press man. You can play off man. You give Jermaine Johnson, Quinnen Williams, you give these guys one-on-one matchups to win and get to the quarterback, and now you put Aaron Rodgers back on the field, and now you roll out Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, to move the ball down the field. So I like Gonzalez here. I understand it's probably doesn't make it might not make a lot of sense, but I think this is just the best player available situation, and I just can't let Christian Gonzalez continue to fall down further down the board.
I think it's really interesting too, because now you have Sauce, you have Christian Gonzalez on the other side at cornerback, and then you can move their other corner, DJ Reed, who's a pretty solid football player. You can actually move him into the nickel, right? And now you can kind of play. You can kind of play that base nickel and just really play man-to-man across the board, which is super interesting to me. So super interesting. I like that pick.
Yeah.
Let's go now to the New England Patriots. This is one, man, where you need to get a weapon here. I know there's a lot of questions about the quarterback position. Is Mac Jones the guy? Is Billy Zappi the guy? Do you need to find another guy in the very near future? I think that's a very legitimate and realistic conversation piece. Mm-hmm. For me, and I know people are going to push against this, not as much on this channel because, I know kind of their affinity for this player I'm about to select, but it's a wide receiver or a tight end for me with this pick for the New England Patriots. I just value this tight end that's on the board more than any wide receiver. That's just where I am. I'm not huge on this wide receiver group. I think it's a really nice day 2 type of wide receiver class. Not a fan of it, especially here in the top 15, but I am a fan of Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame. Give me Michael Mayer. It's funny. His nickname obviously was Baby Gronk, all that great stuff, right? But and he doesn't really play that much like Rob Gronkowski, other than the fact that he's just a massive dude who wins in the air. But you immediately give Mac Jones, who's not the most vertically oriented passer, a short to intermediate separator at the tight end position, a big body in the middle of the field. Michael Mayer to the New England Patriots. Nick, you have Green Bay Packers on the board, man, who looks like the Jordan Love era is about to start for Green Bay.
Yeah, you just cut me again, Ryan. So. Now
that would have been a great pick for them. They just lost.
That would have been my pick for Green Bay. That would have been my pick for Green Bay there. So now I'm on the clock. I got 5 minutes here. So for Green Bay, tight end is a huge need. for them. I mean, you could also talk about left tackle being one with Bakhtiari getting up there in age. I mean, you're obviously turning over the franchise with Jordan Love, so it's not going to be quarterback. Yeah, no, I do agree. I think this is a more day 2 wide receiver class. I don't see a lot of legitimate first round guys that I would be comfortable taking in the first round. Here.
Sorry to cut you off, man, but like, how pissed off would Aaron Rodgers be if after he finally leaves Green Bay then prioritizes wide receiver in the first round after all the stuff that they've been through? It would just be hysterical. Sorry, just throw that in.
Yeah. No, it would be funny. I mean, it would just feel like the most Packers and Aaron Rodgers thing ever. So, but for me here, I've seen this. All right, so let's see what we got let's see who's on the board here. I feel the same way. I mean, I just don't think receiver. There's a lot of value in taking a receiver here. I mean, I think that the defensive class overall in this draft class is probably where the real value is.
Yeah,
I saw you pass the name, Ryan. I'm going to go – if you can go down one. I think this guy makes a lot of sense, but I think Brian Branch is a guy who I like for the Packers here. I think he's a little undervalued. I mean, I've seen – I think this guy has a lot of different, opinions on Branch right now, but to me, I mean, I think he's a top 15 to 20 player in this draft, and I think he's a good fit there in Green Bay. So, I've seen some mocks with him there. I've seen him mock to Green Bay. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't want to go off just those, but for me, I'm just thinking of this analytically. I think you just take the best player on the board. And I think out of the grouping that we see here with Joey Porter, Bijan obviously is a totally different story, but you have to put your GM hat on this situation, like we said before, and just think about the value of the running back in the first round. So I'll go Brian Branch here, safety out of Alabama to the Green Bay Packers.
I love it, man. I actually really do, because Brian Branch, for me, I'll do you one better. You said top 15 to 20. Top 10 player in this class for me graded is Brian Branch. I really like Brian Branch, man. People got this misconception about him because he ran 4.58 at the combine, and it made him look slow going against everybody else. He was running in the cornerback group. He's not a cornerback. He played nickel in college, which is why he was playing corner at the combine. But this is a safety that could also come down and play in the slot. Very good football player. Yeah. We have Washington Commanders, who, man, they're in a little bit of a weird situation here where the board is. I'm just not a Joey Porter guy, man. Like, I would not take Joey Porter Jr. this high.
Let me give you this, because this is a situation I see. I mean, you have Devontae Smith and AJ Brown in your division. You have CeeDee Lamb in your division. The Giants are probably going to add more to. You have Saquon Barkley there for the Giants, who they're probably going to add some receiver help. Last year, teams were able just to throw the ball all over the place for Washington. I mean, they're probably one of the worst in the NFL in pass defense. So for me, I've always liked the cornerback here. I agree. Joey Porter is not the guy to me in at this spot here. I'm not a Joey Porter guy, like you said. I think we agree on that. But if I don't know why being an opposing GM, I'm helping you here, but.
I mean, you're talking. You're.
But let's just talk it out. That's the best way to figure this out.
I was about to say, if nothing else, even if I don't listen to you, if nothing else, you just bought me a little bit of time, which I very do much appreciate, man. I very do much appreciate, because honestly, I looked at Deonte Banks as a high upside corner out of Maryland. Like, maybe that's my guy, because I watched his film recently, man. Kid can really play. It's a little high for him, for me though. Like, he's more a 22 to 32 type of player, like last 10 picks in the first rounds.
Yep.
I'd rather not reach. I'm going to take Nick, and it's going to be a little bit of a funky pick, because people probably aren't going to like it that much. But I'm going to take Brian Brissy out of Clemson, the defensive lineman, because Washington just lost this offseason to Ron Payne, obviously, to a big contract elsewhere, right?
Well, no, actually, no. Deron re-signed with Washington.
Did he?
He did, yes.
I'm an idiot then. I changed my mind then. I changed my mind. Did I redo that pick?
He was tagged, and they re-signed him to the highest paid.
Did they? I thought he left. Oh, you know who left? It was Hargrave. Hargrave got that crazy deal.
Hargrave to the Eagles.
Yes. All right, so we're going to reverse this. We're going to reverse this, though.
You haven't turned your card in yet. It's okay.
Well, I did, though, technically on the mock draft simulator, which is not a great situation. But in this new reality, we're just going to keep this in the back of our minds that Ryan did not pick Brian Bresee here because he
Never
remembered
happened.
that Deron Payne got signed by the Commanders. He's going to give them Deonte Banks because that's where we are with this quarterback class. So Deonte Banks to the Washington Commanders. That's my pick. That's my pick.
You're not too far from 20 to 22 range. So, it might be a little bit of a reach, but it's probably one that pays off. So
go for the high upside, man. Go for the high upside. But
that's what the draft's all about. Go high upside guys. I mean, the guys who have the highest ceiling. I mean, that's what maybe you go for. It might be a guy who's not ready right now, but he has the highest ceiling, and and if he's within that range, it makes sense to take him.
You know who you're going to get. You know who everyone's going to want the Pittsburgh Steelers to take here, Nick. And you see, obviously, is the number one team need for the Pittsburgh Steelers is cornerback. Well, once upon a time, there was a young man named Joey Porter Sr. that played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But with your pick here with the Pittsburgh Steelers, number 17 overall, who would you take if you were the general manager?
Yeah. Can you go back? Let's see. Let's go back to the all.
Yep.
Real quick. Let's see who we had here. So right now we're at all.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if Joey Porter is obviously is certainly the guy that maybe the fans would want.
Yeah.
And probably all Steeler Nation wants. So that makes that does make sense, but I just don't see the value here with taking Porter. So if we're talking high upside here, there's some aging. You have TJ Watt, who's obviously a stud. Who's an all-pro player. Cam Hayward's getting up there a little bit. Yeah, if you stop right there, number 17, name that's popping out to me here. I think Lucas Van Ness, the edge out of Iowa. This is the range where this might make sense to take this kid because, you turn on the tape of Lucas Van Ness and the guy is powerful. Power is his game right now, and this guy can bully 3 techs. He can bully 5 techs. Still needs some work as he's a developing pass rusher, but right now he wins with power. Power is the name of his game, and I think going to the Steelers is a great fit for him to be able to develop and coach him up. You have Tom. The entire situation is stable. Tom has been around a long time. So I think Lucas Van Ness, it would be, a slam dunk situation for him. And I could see that, and I could totally see that being a steal, and I could see him being a guy the Steelers, not to say that they would like, but I could see that scenario playing out where it's a guy that they feel like they can get the most out of him.
And obviously they have TJ Watt as the one pass rusher who was coming off an injury-plagued year, obviously, but he's a fantastic player. One guy that they had a couple years ago, Nick, that left the Steelers but was a very valuable player to them was Bud Dupree, who I think that you can find some parallels between those two games because Bud Dupree was a very power-oriented rusher as a 3-4 outside linebacker. I think Lucas Van Ness has some of those similar attributes. I mean, he just ran 4.58 and like 270-something pounds, man. He's a really nice athlete.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, he's a freak. And, and you, not only compare him to Javon Hargrave, but at one time Hargrave, was a former Steeler and he came, obviously left in free agency to the Eagles, but you see what happened with him and how he's transformed into being one of the better 3 techs out there. So it could be a situation where they put him at 3 technique and let him just wreak havoc and in the backfield all day and be able to get the most they can out of him. So I like Van Ness there. I think it makes some good sense for the Steelers.
And now I'm on the clock with the 18th overall selection for the Detroit Lions. I gave them Devin Witherspoon, the cornerback out of Illinois, with the 6th overall selection. This is a tough one for me, Nick, because there's an edge that I would love to go edge here, but I think if Van Ness was there, I would consider it. But I'm not taking Nolan Smith with the 18th overall selection. I just think that's too high for me personally.
Yep.
And I think that you just took Aiden Hutchinson last year. You had James Houston as a late round draft pick that actually was pretty productive pass rusher for them as a rookie as well. So you could work around that. There's no tight end on the board I would take here. Running back is listed as a need, but it's not a need anymore after, they just got David Montgomery to come to town to pair with DeAndre Swift. So they don't need a running back this high, especially, even though I would love Bijan Robinson in that offense, but it's just not a need for where we are right now. Wide receivers a spot I'm going to go to. this simulator has Jackson Smith and Jigba listed as the top wide receiver, but I don't love the fit with Detroit because they already have a really good slot receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like he's the guy that is kind of the chain mover inside, but he does a lot of his stuff in tight quarters inside. Taking advantage of man coverage from the slots, sitting down against zone coverage. He's that type of guy for Detroit Lions. So I'm going to give him an outside-oriented player. I'm going to give him Quentin Johnston, who is the wide receiver out of TCU.
Okay.
I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but the developmental potential is there, man. 6'3", lines for arms, athletic, explosive, a lot of upside with the Quentin Johnston. So he's going to be the outside, vertically oriented player, and then that will hopefully open up for stuff of a Amon-Ra St. Brown on the underneath routes and intermediate to separator for the Detroit Lions. So Quentin Johnston to the Detroit Lions. And now Tampa Bay is up here, Nick. It was another team that's in a vicarious situation. Like they're in a weird little spot here, man. A little bit. Yeah.
No, they are in a weird spot because they just let go Leonard Fournette. I mean, obviously the quarterback situation is as extremely questionable. You just released Donovan Smith, the left tackle, so that's certainly a need. Defensively, I believe they just re-signed Levante David, but it's certainly an aging. I would say it's certainly an aging. It's getting up there in age. I mean, you re-signed Jamel Dean, so there's a lot of different ways you can go. Well, let me see here. I'm looking at Bijan. I don't see that here, to be honest, because now, okay, Bijan is you could maybe just consider him a generational talent at the running back position. But for me, if I'm a GM of the Bucks, I like Rachaad White. I think he's a guy. He showed that I think he showed, last year that obviously stepping in there, taking over Fournette, getting a lot of the work for Tampa Bay. I mean, I was a White guy last year. I think he's gonna be a pretty good player. He stepped right in there and played pretty well. He showed that he can catch passes out of the backfield, but also that he has the ability to be a featured back. So I'm gonna, it might sound crazy, but I don't like running back here. What I'm gonna do because you're
stalling, man. You're stalling.
Because there's the situation we have here.
Yeah.
This is. I don't think this is going to be a very sexy pick by any means, but I'm just thinking value here, and I think Osiris Torrance is going to be the guy for me. Bucks have lost. I think they need to replenish their offensive line. You could take an offensive tackle here, which could have been Anton Harrison, but I think that's a little bit of a reach at this point. Torrance is a massive man, long arms, huge frame, but I think he's a day one starter. He can come in and play right away. I think they need to just kind of maybe rebuild their offensive line a little bit. Having Marpet retire, I believe Alex Kappa may have left in free agency, Smith leaving, so I think they need to get a little younger on their offensive line. Having Trask back there and Baker, they're going to need to try and find a way to protect these guys if they want to have any success on offense. So I think Torrance, like I said, it's probably not something I would do at this point, but I just think, it makes the most sense with what we have and their needs right now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And that's where the board is right now, you're just like, what players make sense? Because, that's the big thing is I think I'm going to end up with like 13 or 14 first-round grades in this class. Like this class dries up quick, man. Like you're drafting a lot of second-round players in the late stages of the first round here.
Well, that's kind of where we are right now, because it's on the board. You see Addison there, you see Smith and Jigba there, but they obviously don't need a receiver. You have Godwin, you have Mike Evans, you have Russell Gage. I think you're just wasting your resources there that you have. So I'm going to go to best available at a position of need. And I see that, and I think Osiris. That's why I think Osiris Torrance can be a good pick there for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And the one great thing about Osiris Torrance is he is a very good short setting pass protector on the interior. He can really just hunker down against power profile, and especially if it's Kyle Trask, like. You do not want him working against interior pressure, man. Like that's just not his bag. He's not that type of mover at the quarterback position.
I know we want to keep it rolling here, Ryan, but just one thing I want to comment on the interior of the offensive line. It just shows you, how it kind of lacks star power at the top. I mean, really, I can't recall how many drafts there's been where it's only been potentially one interior offensive lineman taken in the first round. I don't know how long it's been since that's happened, but that shows you kind of the teardrop after O'Cyrus Torrence.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess I took Peter Skoronski earlier, so if someone wants to count him as an interior offensive lineman, I guess they could.
Oh yeah, we could.
Like to your points, I mean, I wasn't drafting him necessarily to just be an interior offensive lineman, though. So as a pure interior offensive lineman, your point is very valid. There's no centers that I think are really in the first round conversation. Guards, maybe O'Cyrus Torrence. Like that's kind of where it is, though. Here with the Seattle Seahawks, Nick, you had them taking Tyree Wilson with their first draft pick. They gave you an A+ on the mock draft simulator, by the way. So
hey.
There you go, man. I wouldn't have given you an A+, but they gave you an A+. So that's what's up. Seattle Seahawks. I'm going wide receiver here because my thought process here is that offense was actually surprisingly good last year, and I think that you now have to continue to put good things around Geno Smith or whoever the quarterback is after Geno Smith.
Yep.
DK Metcalf's obviously a part of the long-term plans. Tyler Lockett has been a very good football player, but he is nearing the ends right now. And he is more, even though he's a smaller guy, people kind of don't really understand that. Like, he is a very outside-oriented player. Like, he's a vertically oriented player. He wins down the field a ton. They don't really have a slot receiver that does a lot of great work for them. I mean, they drafted Dwayne Eskridge a couple years ago in the second round out of Western Michigan, and he never materialized, obviously. So give me Jackson Smith and Jigba here for the Seattle Seahawks. Okay. I think he's a plug-and-play slot. Yep. And then maybe as he continues to develop after Tyler Lockett leaves, probably in a year or two, maybe he could play a little bit more outside. But regardless, I think he's a plug-and-play target inside for Geno Smith and that Seattle Seahawks offense. So you got pass rusher first with your with your number 5 overall selection. Then you get a wide receiver here in the second round.
Yeah. No, I like it. I think it makes a lot of sense. I can totally see that scenario playing out. I like that pick a lot. You just continue to put help around Geno Smith. You have Kenneth Walker back there, who gives them a weapon in the running game. Now you have an outside. You have an outside situation of Metcalf, Lockett, and Smith and Jigba in the slot. I mean, Geno has all kinds of weapons to play with next year. So I love that pick. Ryan, you want to get the drum roll going, or get your confetti ready? But here we go, man.
Oh, I know where you're going.
You know where I'm going here, right? Yeah. All right. Bijan, I'm going to go Bijan here. Number 12, running back out of Texas. I can't let him fall outside of the top 20. Bijan is, like I said, I mean, the value of running back in the NFL right now, I mean, it's, we saw last year Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker running back in the last 2-3 drafts. Running back hasn't been taken since the first running back hasn't gone off the board until day 2. But in this situation, like we said before, Bijan's a top 10 player in this draft. I mean, you can maybe consider him a generational type player at the position. I mean, he's going to come in here and start day 1. The only reason why I'm mocking him to the Chargers in this situation is what has played out last week with Austin Eckler. And a lot of times, I've seen this happen time and time again when guys don't want a contract and their team isn't interested in extending isn't interested in negotiating or extending him further, and they have to be traded. More times than not, they end up being traded. So I don't know when it's going to happen, but for this exercise, let's say that it does happen, and Bijan steps into Los Angeles, gives them an entirely different look. Helps everybody will help every single person on that offense in a big way, especially Justin Herbert. And he'll step in day 1 and contribute right away.
Love it. I mean, like you said, with the Austin Eckler situation, you got to start thinking about life after Austin Eckler because he's most likely not going to be there next season. So see obviously how that plays out. The Baltimore Ravens, Nick, it's an interesting situation, obviously, with the Lamar Jackson stuff kind of going back and forth and transition tags being placed on him and all that great stuff, right? Wide receiver, I would love to go wide receiver. I just don't love the board here. I'm just not a Jordan Addison guy here. Like, I'm just not. It's just not a pick that I would like personally. I think that there's more value of getting a guy in the second round that is more closer to the caliber of a Jordan Addison than Jordan Addison going pick number 22. Like, it's just not a pick that I want to make. If you remember earlier in the draft, I accidentally picked Brian Bresee instead of picking Deonte Banks to the Washington Commanders. I'm going to hit Deonte Banks here, but I'm actually giving them Brian Bresee in this situation.
Okay.
Because for me, Calais Campbell was a valuable member of their team over the last few years. He is that inside-out, long, explosive pass rusher, and that's what Brian Bresee brings to the table.
Yeah.
Now, there is going to be some questions that Brian Bresee has been answering all draft process about the health aspect of his situation and, the durability concerns, which are very fair, very fair. But at the end of the day, pick 22, Baltimore Ravens have consistently done this where they just take good football players in these types of spots. Give me Brian Bresee to the Baltimore Ravens.
Sure. Yeah. No, I like it. I think that's a scenario that absolutely plays out. I mean, Baltimore is another organization I think likes to build inside out. And I think they'll probably look at Brian Bresee and maybe see some of Calais Campbell from that scenario. So, and like you said, I mean, Bresee, I think, can step in day one and play. And now once Cable's whenever Campbell decides to hang it up, I mean, you have Bresee who can come in there. You can build your defense around as well. So I like the pick for Baltimore. It's a very Baltimore pick. So.
Baltimore is notorious for just letting good football players fall in their lap and not making a bad decision. Like, that's just kind of what they do. So
absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm with you on that, man.
If you're comfortable with Brian Bresee and the medicals check out, I think the kid has superstar potential. He really does. I would argue that he's a top 10 player in this class just from raw
traits,
physical talents. Like, he
Absolutely.
has that profile. It just never materialized as consistently as it could have because of durability as a sophomore, and then obviously the stuff with his unfortunate passing of his younger sister this past season. So, some things that obviously held him back from hitting his potential, but putting him in a place like Baltimore, I think maybe you could kind of reach for that potential.
Yeah. No, I agree. I love it.
Minnesota Vikings, 23rd overall pick.
Yeah, here, I mean, just thinking this through, Adam Thielen gone, been released. I mean, I think they need to. I mean, Jalen Reagor obviously hasn't materialized the way that maybe they hoped. I mean, that was obviously just a shot in the dark, I think, to hopefully see if they can get something out of them. That doesn't seem like it's materialized. So you seem to already know where I'm going with this. But, listen, Justin Jefferson can't catch every ball. I mean, obviously being the best receiver in the game. But, yeah, I am with you here. I mean, for me, I think – I think I'll disagree from this, and from what you said earlier about Addison being here. I mean, I think this is maybe the range where you might take Addison, and see what kind of upside you can get, because I think at this juncture you are looking for upside, and maybe who knows? I don't know. It's all dependent if they have a first round grade on him, but I do think Addison is right within that late first, early second range. But I think here at this point, like I said, I mean, just the way the board has shaken out here. I mean, there's not somebody who I'm just going to go to the clock or turn my card in and pound the table for. But if there is a guy who I think can maybe bring another element to that offense, especially with the success they had last year, I'm going to take Addison because, you have Jefferson, who's kind of who can run routes at every single level. And you bring Addison here, who can help you stretch vertically as well. I think that would be, and especially going in a good situation with Kevin O'Connell as the head coach and being having an offensive background. I think you can find ways to employ Addison with Jefferson.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I would actually be okay with that situation because I'm not 100% sold on Jordan Addison being the primary volume getter in a passing attack, but with Justin Jefferson, he's not going to be that.
It's a totally different ballgame. Yeah.
Exactly.
Listen, I don't see Addison as the number one receiver in an offense. And maybe I could be wrong one day. He could certainly develop into that, but like I said, I mean, I think he's more in that early day one, day two range. But having a guy like Justin Jefferson, who defenses obviously are game planning for, that leaves a part of the field that's open for Addison where he can use his speed to push vertically, and we've seen that he has some explosive playmaking ability to him. So I think that can make a lot of sense for Minnesota.
Offensive tackle is the spot I'm looking at for Jacksonville Jaguars because Cam Robinson has not been very good at left tackle over the last few years for them. They have Walker Little that I think is going to step into right tackle now that Jawan Taylor is gone, but I'm not huge on Walker Little, and he's been injured often during his college and NFL career. So I'm going to take Anton Harrison here. He is a polarizing player to me.
Sure.
He really is. I think he's very talented. I think he's long. I think he's got good foot quickness. All the tools are there. Just he hasn't put it together yet. And I'm just the power profile worries me. And I'm being very, very forthcoming about that. I do not love this pick, but there's just the board is dried up. You're talking about a lot of second round players now. Yeah. So at least give me a position of value here. Offensive tackle. Anton Harrison, Oklahoma. It has to be the pick. And not one I love, but here we are, man. You're
looking for value here. You're looking for upside, and you're looking for something that makes sense for your organization and for your team. So, I think Anton Harrison is a good pick here for Jacksonville, especially losing Jawan Taylor. I mean, that's a huge loss for them. I mean, so I think and having a team that just made the playoffs last year. I mean, they want to do everything they can to continue that trajectory and make sure that they can put everything they need to around Trevor Lawrence, obviously being the face of the franchise. So I think Anton Harrison, and I think he probably has the ability to come in, step in day one and play play left tackle or wherever they might put him, wherever they think he's the best fit. So I think you're just trying to find value, like you said. So I think it's a good pick for them.
Yep. So we're now New York Giants, Nick. I know it's your favorite team ever. So New York Giants with the 25th overall pick.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the Giants here. I mean, we've seen a lot of. There's been talk about wide receiver here. I mean, they just lost Julian Love to free agency. This is a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of. You know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I don't see this playing out. I mean, I think wide receiver is probably the direction they want to go. This is the same situation as we've had here with Washington, where I think you just need to be able to, you got to think your division, who you're playing, and having the talent of a wide receiver within the NFC East. I'm going to give him Joey Porter here, cornerback out of Penn State. Like I said, Julian Love just lost in free agency, their safety, but I think for the Giants, I mean, they're defensively. I mean, I think it's we saw what happened in that playoff game against the Eagles, and they just had no answer for A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. So I think you really need to have that in the back of your mind and be able to have somebody who can come in here and at least give you something or at least provide, at least slow down one part of that tandem at wide receiver. So I don't really like this pick, but like you said, the board's kind of drying up here. Not a lot. I'm just looking for value, and I think Joey Porter can maybe give you some value there towards the middle late first round.
Yeah, let's not paint around it, man. This board stinks right now. Like it stinks on ice. It's like
hard,
late
man.
First round. It's not
hard. I'm going to use up my time. Time that I have here. So. Yeah.
Man. Dallas Cowboys, Nick. I'm definitely going to go wide receiver. I think there's a couple different ways you can go here. You see the top three guys there, and that is the board that I'm working off of here is Zay Flowers from Boston College, Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee, who's the speedster, and then Josh Downs, who everyone knows I'm a big fan of. And since we're doing more as where our eyes lie as general managers, not as much a predictive one, I'm going to go Josh Downs here from North Carolina.
Okay. Yep.
Because I think that he brings some of similar qualities in a different package than what Amari Cooper brought to the Cowboys a few years ago. Short intermediate separator with good route running ability, stronger hands and concentration through contact than you would expect for a guy of Josh Downs' size. I think he could play a little bit of inside and out. And with having CeeDee Lamb in that offensive wide receiver, another guy that can play a little bit inside and out, I think that you can mix and match those guys, in almost a Z role and then slot role together and get some really interesting combinations. So give me Josh Downs to the Dallas Cowboys here. Yeah,
I like it. I think the Cowboys want to make a splash. I mean, obviously, Michael Gallup hasn't materialized the way maybe they wanted to. He had a little bit of he had a down year after that big extension that they signed him to last year. So there's probably some question marks with him. It's very possible that maybe this could be his last year in Dallas. I believe Noah Brown signed elsewhere in free agency. So I think, Dallas has always we've seen Dallas before. This has been a trend for them that they like to find playmakers. They like to really focus on their offense, and a lot of times, they're looking for they're looking for offensive playmakers on the outside. So I like Downs there. Like I said, I mean, my first thought was him and CD together. You have CD, who's the guy you build your offense, you build your passing game around. It's kind of that, Z, like you said, is that Z receiver who could probably also play a little bit of X for you as well. He has that body control and that contested catch ability to go up and make catches in traffic. So, and Josh Downs isn't that type of player with his size and his frame, but he's a guy who can snap off breaks to the top of his route. I mean, he's a good slot receiver. You can put him in there now. Like you said, having the concentration, the concentration to strengthen his hands through contested catches. I mean, I think Downs is a good fit there for the Cowboys. So it's a good pick. I like it.
Yeah, man, and I didn't want to go Jalen Hyatt because I want to give Dak someone who actually caught the ball consistently. So Jalen Hyatt was out of the conversation
right.
for me.
It wasn't just run there. Yeah, and it wasn't just run it's just not running vertically all the time.
I've never seen Jalen Hyatt run a route that wasn't a stop route of a go ball or a comeback. I haven't seen him run a single other interior, like outside or inside breaking route. That's all I've seen him run, which is just a little bit of projection there for a guy like Jalen Hyatt. Obviously, that speed is fantastic, but still, like there's a lot of nuance to the wide receiver position that needs to be answered by a guy like him. But we're on with 27 is the Buffalo Bills here.
Nicholas. So we're at the Bills here. I mean, I think with Buffalo, I mean, obviously running back is probably a situation where they want to upgrade, or they would like to find someone else. But I think they're looking for more of a power back from all indications of what I heard. So I'm going to pass on running back there. Like I said, I mean, the board's kind of drying up here. I mean, I think they're looking for another element of their passing game. Isaiah McKenzie was just released. I mean, Gabriel Davis had a down season. That seems to be, from injuries. You have Stephon Diggs there, who's obviously the biggest part of your passing game. He's a guy you build your passing game around. Gabe Davis is more of that X-type receiver. But also who can push vertically as well. But like I said, more of a bigger body type. So I'm gonna go Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College here.
Interesting.
I think this is a good spot for him here. That late first, I think Zay is. I have a day 2 grade on Zay. I think he's more of a day 2 type player. But like I said, we're looking for value here, and at this point, having where you're sitting at in this part of the draft, you're probably just looking for a guy who can come in and maybe and help you, immediately day one. And you're not asking Zay to be your number 1 wide receiver, but having it, lining up opposite Stephon Diggs, having Gabriel Davis, as kind of like I said, as more of that bigger body type receiver. Now you can have Flowers. Flowers' game is really a lot of. I think there's a lot of dynamic ability of Flowers. I mean, you can line him up in the slot, have him run routes out of the slot. You can bring him on jet sweeps. You can run your your quick screen, quick passing game with him as well. He does have that explosive ability where he can, turn a 10-yard route or a 5-yard out route into a 75-yard touchdown. So I think there's a nice little element to his game that Buffalo can incorporate with Flowers. So I like Flowers there for Buffalo. It gives them another weapon to help Josh Allen.
He would have been the second guy that I would have taken to Dallas, the previous pick. If I didn't take Josh Downs, I would have taken Zay Flowers. So everybody here knows, and everybody that follows me on Twitter knows that I am a big fan of Zay Flowers. I love him as that space player, explosive, yak guy. He's a really good football player, man. There's no doubt.
Good football player. No, I'm with you on that. I mean, I like this receiver class. It's not a guys who have a lot of size and a big frames, but a lot of shifty, a lot of guys with juice. So I'm the same way. I mean, I like Flowers, I like Downs, so I like both those guys a lot.
Cincinnati Bengals kind of sabotaged themselves recently. So they make the deal for Orlando Brown Jr., who has been on record that he wants to play left tackle. He's not going to play right tackle. So they make the deal. They get him to come to town. But what happens after that, Nick? Jonah Williams is like, guys,
I'm out of here. Bye.
I'm good. I'm out of here. So now you might be in a situation where you need to find a right tackle in this draft.
Sure.
Like you're going to have Orlando Brown at left tackle, but Jonah Williams doesn't seem like he wants to be there now with the whole situation. So you're in the same situation that you were before this. You were hoping that Jonah Williams was just going to move over to right tackle. You're going to have Orlando Brown Jr. Now you don't have a right tackle. So there's two guys that are right tackle candidates on the board here. Darnell Wright, DeJuan Jones. I'm lukewarm on both players. I am. People follow me like they know that. I'm not the biggest fans of either one of these football players, but I think that where this board is right now, which is so dried up, I think you still have the opportunity to get a good starting right tackle in the NFL. Yeah. And I think that DeJuan Jones is the guy that I'm going to take. I have a lot of questions about DeJuan Jones as far as his real want to play the game of football, but the kid has a rare skill set. You haven't seen guys with this wingspan ever, like historically. You don't see guys that are as big as him just walk around every day. And he had a really nice season for the Ohio State Buckeyes. He took a huge step, was not very good in 2021, was very good in 2022 as a right tackle. Give me DeJuan Jones. Don't love it, but at least you get your right tackle of the future and in a position that you need now with Joe Burrow, obviously.
No, it's a position of need. I mean, and, Jones could probably step in there and play right tackle for you immediately. Really, really impressed with the combine too, Ryan. I mean, just being 6'8" and 350 pounds. I mean, he moved. He showed he moved really well as well. So he has a little bit of quickness to him. So, as a big man who can move. So yeah, I mean, I think it's good there with DeJuan Jones. I mean, I like it, and I think that's some of the and listen, you have Joe Burrow there, who's the face of your franchise, and you got to continue to build around him, make sure you can protect him, because I think Cincinnati gave up. They were up there in terms of the amount of sacks that given up last year. So it's always been a problem so far. So you got to do everything in your power to make sure that you keep that guy upright, because that's that's the key to being able to compete against Kansas City year in and year out. So
it's also going to be kind of fun to picture a 6'8", 340-something pound Orlando Brown, and on the other side of him is a 6'8", 375-pound DeJuan Jones. Like, that's a pretty funny combination, if nothing else. So there we go. New Orleans Saints, another team that is in a I feel like they're in a spot where they should just tear it down and rebuild, but they're trying to hold on to a window for some reason. I don't know exactly what the reason for it is, but New Orleans here, man, how would you help them out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think for me, I know that I believe Marcus Davenport just left in free agency. I believe Cam Jordan's still there with the Saints, or maybe not, but I mean, I know he's getting up there in age. For me, I mean, I don't, I did not watch a lot of Nolan Smith this past year, but obviously he's opened a lot of eyes with his combine performance, and obviously he was being lost for the season with Georgia, but he has some, but you plug on the tape, I mean, you see a guy who has some crazy athleticism and some unreal speed for a guy playing his position. I think this is probably a situation you're just looking for value and upside here, and you're looking for how can you, how can you get a little bit younger while trying to maintain this window, that you still think you have right now. So, but Nolan Smith, edge out of Georgia, I think put himself into the day one discussion. So I'll give Nolan Smith going to the Saints at pick number 29.
If he fits into a room with a really good coach, I think Nolan Smith has a lot of upside. Mm-hmm. He's not as technically advanced as I thought he would be as a fourth-year player, obviously, for Georgia, but the traits are there, man. He's an explosive athlete. Yep.
Traits are there, and everybody, the term you always hear is bet on traits. And for NFL evaluators and front office decision makers, I mean, that's always going to take precedent at the end of the day. So it's probably going to be the same situation where they want to bet on those traits, and hopefully they can develop Smith. But yeah, I think it could make sense in this situation.
You're an Eagles fan, so I'm sure you know this stat, Nick. But when was the last time the Philadelphia Eagles drafted a linebacker in the first rounds?
Gosh. in the first round. I want to say we're going back to the 90s.
We're
I
not
believe
going
it
back
might
to the
have been.
90s.
It was not 90s first round linebacker. Man, I should know this, to be honest, but I want to say it was in the early 2000s, maybe.
No.
I'm trying to think.
No. When I said it's not 90s, I mean you need to go further back, sir. Further back.
So we're talking maybe 70s and 80s. Is it? It's not. No, it's not Bill Berge, is it?
It's not Bill Berge.
No,
1979, Jerry Robinson was the last time the Philadelphia Eagles have drafted a linebacker in the first round, and that ends today, sir.
It's probably not going to. That's probably not going to happen.
But you look at the Eagles roster. They just lost T.J. Edwards.
Right.
They have Kaiser White. I know they want to play potentially the kid from Georgia that came out last year. His name's escaping me. 17. Nakobe Dean. There it is. Came back eventually. I'm going to give him Trenton Simpson here, man. I am. I love Trenton Simpson. I think he's another guy that is just so overthought. And at pick 30 there, okay. If you want to talk about the linebacker, whatever, value, all that type of stuff, Trenton Simpson is a guy that could transform a defense. Philadelphia Eagles had a really good defense last year. And all due respect to TJ Edwards, who was a good football player for the Eagles last year, Trenton Simpson has much more potential to impact the defense than what a TJ Edwards had. So Trenton Simpson to the Philadelphia Eagles there.
Hey, listen, if that ends up being the case, Ryan, and the Eagles come out with Skoronski and Trenton Simpson in this draft, that's totally fine with me. You're not gonna hear me criticizing them at all because Trenton Simpson is all kinds of upside. I mean, you see the athleticism; it pops off the tape. He's a guy who can change the course of the game. He can make an impact, and he could probably step in on day one. Now you have Dean and Simpson in there as your two linebackers, and listen, they have to get younger. I think it's important. I think they know that. I think they understand they need to get younger at some parts of their defense. This is probably the range for linebackers where, this is probably the range where you might want to take a shot on one of these linebackers. I mean, it's not a great linebacker class. Simpson's probably the only guy with a first-round grade here. Maybe even, Jack Campbell as well as another guy. But after that, I mean, like I said, you're probably just taking some shots here. But I would, that would not have a problem with that, with Trenton Simpson there, pick 30. And I think it's a good spot for him as well, so.
So Kansas City Chiefs, man, 2 picks left. We got Kansas City and then a bonus pick because I don't know why the mock draft simulator does, but it goes over to the next spot. So pick 32 is going to be coming, even though there's only 31 picks in the draft. Right. Whatever, conversation for a different time. Kansas City Chiefs with the 31st overall selection here, sir.
Yeah, so for this pick here, I'm just thinking how Kansas City, the way they like to build. It's all about building around Patrick Mahomes. We're giving him, excuse me, different weapons to use. I mean, Kansas City just seems like that's what they do. They just try and find different weapons to use and bring in, they've done a good job with drafting guys and talent. So I see Jahmyr Gibbs here, but the guy below him, I think, is probably the direction that they go. Oh. I'm going to give him Darnell Washington, tight end out of Georgia. 13 personnel, that's how they beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. 12, 13 personnel. I think they ran it the most out of any team last year. And Washington, listen, I'm not a big Washington guy. I'm not a big Darnell Washington guy. I mean, he seems to be all over the place. But, in this spot, in this situation, you're not asking him to be Travis Kelce, but he's a hell of a blocker. He's, quote, the term you hear people hear now is a 6-man on your offensive line because he's a very advanced blocker right now. And 6'5", 270. I think Kansas City right now, that's probably an area where they can upgrade. So Darnell Washington, pick 31 to the Chiefs.
It's very interesting because anytime that you're a Kansas City Chief team that just won a Super Bowl, sometimes those types of rosters have the ability to take a little bit of luxury picks. And I think that's obviously what Washington would be. But last year, their number 2 tight end was Noah Gray. So Darnell Washington is obviously an upgrade over Noah Gray. All due respect to Noah Gray. Last pick. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say that the reason why I didn't go Gibbs here is because you got a lot out of Pacheco last year. Had a hell of a performance in the Super Bowl. So I think they feel comfortable going into the next season with Pacheco.
Absolutely. And we are going to end this mock draft with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had the number 17th overall selection where Nick gave them Lucas Van Ness, edge out of the University of Iowa. 32nd overall, Nick. This is a spot where I'm willing to take a little bit of a gamble on traits. So I'm going to give him Kaylee Ringo, the cornerback out of Georgia, 6'2", 200-plus pounds, athletic player, and a guy that I really think his best football is still ahead of him. That's kind of what I think of with a guy like a Kaylee Ringo. Was very inconsistent the last 2 years, but if he puts it together, he's got all the talent in the world.
Absolutely. So. Has all the talent in the world if you can put it together. And I think same thing with Van Ness. It would be a great fit for him, a great situation for him to go into and just continue to learn and develop. And, an unbelievable ceiling. If he could put it all together, he has as high of a ceiling of any cornerback in this class. And I don't think Pittsburgh comes out of this draft without picking a cornerback day one or day two. Yep,
agreed. So quick recap here on the 32 selections because we're going to hit just a couple comments that we had in from the listeners here. So we had Carolina Panthers selecting C.J. Stroud, quarterback from Ohio State. Houston Texans, Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama. Will Anderson, edge out of Alabama to the Arizona Cardinals. Anthony Richardson, pick 4 to the Indianapolis Colts, quarterback, University of Florida. Tyree Wilson, edge, Texas Tech to the Seattle Seahawks. Devin Witherspoon, cornerback, Illinois to the Detroit Lions. The Las Vegas Raiders, still trips me up every time I want to say the Oakland Raiders, taking Will Levis, quarterback from Kentucky. Jalen Carter's fall stops at pick 8 to the Atlanta Falcons, defensive lineman out of Georgia. Paris Johnson Jr., offensive tackle, Ohio State to the Chicago Bears. Peter Skoronski, offensive tackle, offensive lineman from Northwestern to the Philadelphia Eagles. Broderick Jones, Tennessee Titans out of the University of Georgia, offensive tackle. Miles Murphy, defensive end, Clemson to the Houston Texans. Christian Gonzalez, quarterback, Oregon, 13th overall to the New York Jets. Michael Mayer off the board, tight end, Notre Dame to the New England Patriots. Brian Branch, safety out of Alabama to the Green Bay Packers. Brian Brissy, 16th overall pick to the Washington Commanders out of the University of Clemson. Lucas Van Ness, defensive end out of the University of Iowa to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Quentin Johnston, wide receiver, TCU to the Detroit Lions. Osiris Torrance, offensive guard, University of Florida to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver, Ohio State to the Seattle Seahawks. Los Angeles Chargers take Bijan Robinson, running back out of the University of Texas. Deontay Banks, cornerback, Maryland to the Baltimore Ravens. Jordan Addison, wide receiver, USC to the Minnesota Vikings. Anton Harrison, offensive tackle, Oklahoma to protect the potential blind side of Mr. Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville with the Jaguars. Joey Porter Jr.'s fall stops with the New York Giants at pick 25, cornerback out of Penn State. Josh Downs, wide receiver, North Carolina to the Dallas Cowboys. Buffalo Bills, pick 27, Zay Flowers, wide receiver, Boston College. DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle, Ohio State to the Cincinnati Bengals. Nolan Smith, edge, pass rusher to New Orleans Saints out of the University of Georgia. Trenton Simpson, linebacker, Clemson to the Philadelphia Eagles. Darnell Washington, tight end, University of Georgia to the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Pittsburgh Steelers select Kaylee Ringo, cornerback out of Georgia. So that is going to do it for our first mock draft here. And again, we're going to have a more predictive mock as we get a little bit closer, when we have a little bit of more intel and kind of the rumblings behind the scenes and when the pro days and all the top 30 visits, all those things conclude. That's where we really start getting the meat of all the rumors in the NFL draft sphere. Want to hit on a couple questions real quick. We just had a couple comments and questions here that we'll work through very quickly, and then we'll end the show tonight. Tommy Guns just had a question. He said, Ryan, my obligatory question, what do y'all think Tennessee is going to do? Well, Tommy, that's why we did a mock draft, man. We showed you what they did.
We just told you, Tommy.
We just told you, Tommy.
Yeah.
Tommy did have another question, though, that he said, what would Derrick Henry be worth in a trade for just draft picks, and what should he be worth? That's interesting. I mean, Nick, my initial thought is, like, you definitely don't get a first-round pick for him.
No.
I mean, he's a 29, 30-year-old running back.
Right.
Day 2 pick, maybe multiple day 2 picks, day 2 pick and a day 3 pick, something in that ballpark.
I think that's where I'm at. Day 2 and a day 3 pick with Derrick Henry at this point. A lot of miles, right now on Henry. Certainly, I think a first-round pick. A lot of teams would balk at that. But, yes. Yeah, day 2, maybe a second and a fourth, something like that. Maybe not even a second, probably a third and a fourth, I would say, somewhere around there.
And if you do get those 2 picks right now, honestly, I would do it just because, Derrick Henry's an excellent football player, but you hit that 30-mile marker and you're running the ball as much as he is, and then he got banged up, obviously, last year and a little bit this year. It's going to start happening a little bit more and more. So I think you take the value where you can get it, because I just don't think he's a part of a winning window anymore, right? Because Ryan Tannehill, there's going to need to be a reset of quarterback soon. That roster is losing kind of the winning window that it was in a couple years ago. So you might have to try to reboot here soon. So getting rid of an aging running back might be a good idea. We had a question here. We answered this one earlier. This was Patrick Gandhi. It just asked, was this going to be predictive or what we would do? It was what we would do, obviously. And the last question of the night, Nick, away from John A1, said, is there a veteran quarterback the Indianapolis Colts can sign to aid in grooming a player like Anthony Richardson?
Well, they just brought in Gardner Minshew. They signed him to a 1-year deal. So
that's your guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, Gardner's probably is a career backup. I mean, he had some couple seasons there where he started for Jacksonville, but I think it's clear that he's a career backup, but he's a really good backup quarterback. Yes. And, he has a lot of experience now where absolutely, I think it's, and if that's the direction they want to go, I think it's a great situation for Richardson. I mean, Gardner, he's played. He might have five. This maybe he's going in his fifth or sixth season. Started a lot of games, won a lot of ball games. So I think it could be a great, it could be a good situation for Richardson to go in there and learn a little bit under Gardner Minshew. Obviously, Richardson will be the one starting and playing, but when you come off the sideline, hey, this is what I saw. This is what you should do. Things like that. Just being a coach, being in like a another coach on the sideline for Richardson.
Yeah, he would be big because I think you said it, Nick. Like Anthony Richardson is a guy that I think needs to get some live bullets, but just to have that entity on the sideline of a guy that's kind of been there, seen it, right? I think that is a big help potentially for him. But I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Obviously, this was our first live mock draft 1.0 because we'll be having another one here in a couple weeks. Yes, there'll be a lot more, and we'll have one more on this channel at least. That is going to be a predictive mock at the end of the draft process. But I want to thank you all so much for obviously joining with us tonight. Again, Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at IrishBreakdown.com, as well as the NFL Draft Analyst over at RiseandDraft.com. I want to thank my guy, Nick Muzzillo, for hopping on with me today. I know it's late, obviously, where we are here in the East Coast, and the babies are sleeping right now, but we took, obviously, some time. Really appreciate you all for being with us, though, in this first live show that we've done, or that I've done, and Nick has done, obviously, but on the CFB channel. We hope to have CFB Nation channel. So I hope that we'll have a lot more, especially kind of as we get closer to the draft process. So make sure if you are here and you haven't yet, subscribe to CFB Nation on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every one of your favorite podcast platforms. If you're watching us live on YouTube, hit the notification bell, like button. You can also go to your favorite podcast platform and hit 5-star reviews. Tell them that Ryan and Nick sent you. You love those guys. They're fantastic peeps. But we appreciate you so much. Again, this is the Rise at NFL Draft podcast, bringing you a live mock draft. So from Nick, I am Ryan. Thank you all again for joining the show. We'll talk to you again very, very soon.